tablet screen, excellent. So this was, I'm glad someone else has used Zoom more than me. Now I've lost my pen. So what I was going to do is it's going to be a short session just going over the basics of racing. So the first bit is going to be talking about starts, because starts is probably the most complicated bit of racing. What's going on, there's lots of flags, there's lots of horns. It all goes a bit mad. So we'll go over that. Then we'll go over the course, what you actually do getting around the course, what courses typically look like, and what they might look like at the club. And then we'll just go over some basic rules to finish off. And this is because it gets a bit daunting seeing boats going around and getting close to each other. And it's good to have a handle on the rules. And in all honesty, the rule book is quite long. It's like 60 odd pages long. But you only actually really need to know 3 rules, and you can get by with everything. So that's the agenda for today. So has anyone got anything else that they want me to cover at all before we crack on? No? Okay, so starts. So the first thing is what a start line looks like, so you know where to go. So start line is typically, you have a committee boat, and at D, that's typically the arc. Does everyone know what the arc looks like, which the arc is? I think most people do.
Jonathan, can you ask other people to mute, because there's quite a lot of background noise?
I can actually force mute, I think. Cool, yeah, but people do mute. If you want to ask a question, then please unmute. But if you're not, then please do mute. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, hopefully everyone knows what the arc looks like. It's got a cabin on it, but that's typically there. And then there's always a second mark as well. Now, what the race officer will do is he will pick a mark or lay a mark so that it is roughly across the wind. So you'll have the wind coming down here like this, and it will be roughly 90 degrees to the wind, give or take a little bit. It's never perfect, by the way, but it's roughly that way. Now, at the club, what happens is, so at an event you'll go and they will lay a specific mark. It'll be orange or something like that, and it'll probably have a flag on it as well. But at the sailing club, because we go out racing every week, you don't want to lay too many marks. What they do is they have some fixed starting marks. So I'm going to draw a different chart here. And you've got the arc there, and you've got the shoreline here with the clubhouse here. And then there's 3 marks that are laid. There's one here, and one here. So there's 3 possible lines. Now, I can't remember which is which, but I think one's green, one's blue, and one's orange. But the order, I don't know which the order is, to be honest. But there were 3 standing marks there. And so when you go out, you'll get told we're on the green start mark, or on the blue start mark, or on the orange start mark, and you'll get told from the arc which one is your start mark, but it's always going to be one of those 3. And they'll pick the one that's best suited for the wind angle. So if the wind's coming from here, for example, that direction, they'll use this one here, so it's the one that's most towards 90 degrees. It's just to save having to lift up the same marks every single time. So what happens is, once you have a start, you have your start line, there's a countdown system. And when the countdown reaches 0, you can cross the line. Now you can, before the countdown hits 0, you can sit around anywhere you want. There's nothing to stop you in normal circumstances sitting anywhere you want at all before the start. There's no rules at all. It's just the second that gun goes, you have to be on the lower side of that line. And then that gun is the release for you to cross between those 2, okay? So it's as simple as that, just don't be over at the start, and we'll talk about what being over means in a minute. So now we know there's a countdown, so we need to know how to actually know what on earth that countdown is doing. And that's done through the flags, and it's done through the horns that the OD uses. Now, there are 2 countdown sequences that are typically used. The standard one that is used is a 5-4-1-go system. And there is also a 6-3-go system. Now, Mal, am I right in thinking the club is 5-4?
Well, it depends, because quite often they use 6-3 go, but
Yeah.
in other competitions like the regatta, they always use the standard 5-4-1 go. But
Okay,
we're mainly used to doing 6-3 because it's, I suppose, potentially multiple starts, but really you could use 5-4.
So I think it depends on the race officer on the day. So you always need to check what start sequence you're on, because at the club they can use either. So we'll go over both now. And as Mal says, the 6-3 go system is a lot easier if you're doing multiple starts for the race officer, especially if you're trying to get multiple starts off quickly. And we'll go over what multiple starts might look like as well. Okay. So there could be lots of, so we'll just go on this circumstance that it's a 5-4-1 go sequence, and there is only one fleet out on the course. And that fleet is the dart fleet. And so what we'll be told is that we have a class flag. Every fleet has a class flag. And the dart class flag is typically the D flag, D for dart. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. It's got yellow band at the top, yellow band at the bottom, and a blue band in the middle. So if you see that flying, you know that there's a dart race going on. It might be that you go to a regatta and they choose a different flag. You always have to think about which flag they're using, but at the club, it's the D flag. So what happens is at the 5 minutes, there'll be a sound signal, big long sound signal, hopefully, but there will be a sound signal, and the D flag will go up. Okay, so that's your class flag to say, your class, the dart fleet, is starting in 5 minutes. Then at the 4, what happens is the preparatory flag goes up. Now the preparatory flag is the P flag. And this flag is the same always. Doesn't matter which fleet you're in, doesn't matter if there's multiple starts going on, the preparatory flag always means the same thing. Sometimes called the blue Peter, sometimes called the P flag, but it looks like that, and it's blue on the outside and white in the middle. And that means, and that goes up at 4 minutes. Okay, so then when you get to 1 minute to go, what happens is the P flag comes down, and on the go gun, the class flag comes down. So throughout the sequence, you'll know where you are, because if the D and the P flag are both up, then you're somewhere in the 4 to 1 minute range. You know you've got at least a minute to go. If you see the P flag come down, but you see the D flag stay up, then you know that it's just 1 minute to go. You've got to get there. The start's going to happen in a minute. And when the D flag comes down, it's go time. So that's the start sequence there for a 5-4-1 go. Okay, everyone happy with that? I'm going to take silence as happy, but yeah, do ask if you've got any questions.
Yes, happy.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to switch over to a 6-3 go system, because it is a little bit different. So the 6-3 go system is 6-3, and then go is both the P and the D come down. So it's very similar. It's a similar kind of thing. First gun, the D goes up. The second gun, the P goes up. And the third gun, everything comes down. Now, what you might see, sorry, so that's simple. But yeah, even if you don't know which starting sequence you're in, what you can do is set your watch to 5-4-1 go. That's what I quite often do. I get on the start line, see the first flag go up, and then if the P flag goes up 1 minute later, it has to be a, if the P flag goes up 1 minute later, then it has to be a 5-4-1 go sequence. But if the P flag does not go up 1 minute after the class flag, then it has to be a 3-6-0 sequence. So you can tell quite quickly if you don't know the information what's going on. Okay. So that's the very, very, very basics of a start. To make life more complicated, you might have other class flags, for example. There might be a second fleet. We might have a handicap flag going, handicap fleet, which you sometimes have when we've got dinghies. And this is what Mal was saying when you might have multiple starts on the 6-4-1 go. if we're using the 5-4-1 go, and you have a multiple start, which is what we did at the regatta, when we started one fleet, we also put up the class flag for the next fleet at the same time. So we then, the go gun for one fleet was the start, the first gun for another fleet. So you always had a class flag up, but that meant you always knew what was going on, because if your class flag was up, it was your starting sequence. If you've got a 6-3 go system, then they can really churn it through. So what you might see here is that if darts are going first and handicaps going second, you might see at 6 go, at 6, actually at, I'll go 9 here. Sorry. At the 9, you might see the dart go up, and you might see the preparatory go up at 6. But you might also see, I can't remember what the H flag is, but I'll just write H here. You might also see the H flag go up. Now what that means is this here is the 6 minute for the dart. And this one here is the 6 minutes for the handicap. And then at 3 minutes, the dart comes down, and at 0, the P and the H come down. And that means the darts go here. And here the handicap starts. Does that make sense? It does get a bit more complicated when you get another fleet in, but you just have to keep an eye on on these class flags. Know which your class flag is, and keep an eye on that. Okay. So unless there's any questions, I'm going to assume that makes sense. Now, what can happen on a start line? And we won't go into too much depth on these. Is on a club start, you might have it like this, and you got James is being a little bit eager. The rest of the fleet is all sitting here on the start gun. They're all quite happy. And James is being a very little bit eager, and he's over the line. And the OD can clearly see that that boat, or maybe 2 boats or 3 boats are over the line, clearly over the line, and he wants to penalise them for that. So what he does is he does a second hoot, so you'll actually have a boop boop on the start, and this flag will go up. It's the X flag, for those who want to know what their flags are, but it's a cross, blue cross like that, white with a blue cross. If that goes up, then that means there is at least 1 boat that the race officer can identify who is over the start line. And the race officer can, if they want, shout out, "James, it was you." But he is under no obligation whatsoever to identify the boat that was over. In fact, in majority of cases, he will not. He will actually refuse to identify the boat who was over, because otherwise he's assisting people on the race course. So yeah, I expect that flag will go up, and it's up to James to work out, I'm over. And if James comes around and says, okay, I was over, he does a course like that and dips the line and starts again, then the X flag will come down. But it will only come down at the point at which they exonerate themselves. The last person exonerates themselves. If there were 2 boats over, and James comes back and exonerates himself, but this boat does not, the X flag will stay up. And so James will never know if he was over or not. He just won't. And it might be that this boat here wasn't sure. He was close to the line. He wasn't sure. And he's like, oh, was it me? Was it not? And he chooses to come back. He will never ever know if he chose to come back correctly or not. It's just how it is, unfortunately. You just know that there's at least 1 boat over when that X flag goes on. So yeah, that's the X flag. So that's what you'll see at club sailing. I don't think you'll ever see any other flags at the start at club sailing. I'll only go over these very, very briefly, because I don't think it's something to worry about right now for you guys, because I think you guys should focus on the club sailing. But when you come to an actual regatta, there are some more circumstances. One circumstance is there's so many people over the start line that the race officer cannot identify who's over. It's just a complete mess, and he doesn't have a clue what's going on. What will happen then is he will sound a general recall. And to sound a general recall, it's a 3-hoot job, and he'll put up a flag like this. It's called the third substitute, if you really want to know. And it's blue triangle with a yellow triangle. It's quite distinctive. That means general recall, and that means all bets are off. We're starting the whole thing again. So they will then, after a little while, they'll reset the course if they need to. They'll bring down the general recall, and 1 minute later, they'll put up the class flag and start again. Okay? Now, if a general recall happens, there is a chance you will see, especially if the fleet's being very naughty, you'll see some other flags going on. The P flag might not go back up. So what you might see is you'll see the D flag go up, D flag. And then on that, that'll be on the 5. And then on the 4, you might see something else happen. First, you might see, instead of the P flag, you might see this, which is the I flag. Now that means the fleet's been naughty. The race officer's getting a little bit annoyed with you. And it means that if you are over the line in the last minute before the start, so the I flag will come down at 1 minute, and then the D flag will come down at 0 minutes. It means that if you were over the line in this period here, so between over here, in this period, then you can't just dip the line. You know, I said here, James could just dip the line. He can't do that. He has to go all the way around the ends. You have to go around the ends to exonerate yourself. Now that flag's actually quite rare. You don't see it very often at all. But it is something to be aware of, okay? If the fleet's really naughty, then the race officer might do something else. And instead of the I flag, you might put up the dreaded black flag instead of the P. And this is a flag you want to be wary of. This is a dangerous flag. It means that if you are over the line at any point in the last minute of the race, so in the last minute before the start of the race, you're disqualified. That's it. You're just disqualified. Even if you go over here for 10 seconds and then come back down again and start last, you're disqualified. Doesn't matter. And it gets even worse, because if there's a general recall and you were over and you were disqualified for that general recall and they restart the race, you're not even allowed to restart the race. You're completely disqualified. Even if they restart the race, you cannot start. So the black flag is a really horrible rule. But yeah, it won't happen at club sailing. So don't worry about this. But just let you know that if you see a black flag, be careful. That's all I'll say there. Okay. So that's sort of the basics of starting. So is there any questions that people have got on that? No. Okay. So in terms of courses, the club course and regatta courses are quite different. So we'll go over both quickly. So the club course is the one that we all use the most. So there's always a course card. So what we have is a set of marks out on the water. And this year, I'm not sure they've all been out, but they're generally out. And now you might have to correct me when I get this obviously wrong. So we've got the sailing club here with some masts in the boat park. We've got Sally's cottage down here. I hope everyone knows that. That's the white cottage down the just up towards Heswell. And then so off the club, we've got, so off Sally's cottage, we've got Mark 1, and then 2, and then, no, that's 4, isn't it? Sorry. That's 2. Where's 1? I can't remember what 1 is. I always get these mixed up, so apologies for this. I think that one's 2, and that one's 4, and that one's 3, isn't it now? That was 5.
I think, well, there was a change. I was moving position then to find the course card, which is in my buoyancy aid, but it's out in the garage, unfortunately.
Okay.
And see, I thought 1 was near Sally's cottage, but
yeah, so did I. But 4 is definitely this corner, isn't it?
yes. Well, let's go with that because that kind of does look right to me. I just don't know that we've lost the number 1, but yeah.
And then
while you're chatting there, I'll open up the garage and go and have a look. But I'll take the phone with me, so you carry on, John.
And then there are some other marks. There's an A and a B way over there. Now, actually, that start line's the wrong way around because the starts are always that side of the arc. So yeah, this is essentially the course layout, and it's done like this so that we don't have to do reset courses every time. So the rescue boats have an easy life because they're doing it every single week, which is fine. So what you'll get told is, well, there is actually a course card. So in theory, what the race officer should do is he'll go out and there's a list of courses. So it will say do 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 is your course. And then you look at the course card and it says, well, what the race officer will do, he'll say, I want to do 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, or whatever it is. And the course card will actually have a set of example courses, and he will say, okay, so this is the course I want to do, and the number, it might be number 34 or something like that. And then the race officer can put on the back of the committee boat, it's course number 34, or it's course number 22, or something off the course card. Now, I've never actually seen that happen at this club. Typically, the race officer makes it up as he goes along. So he gets out on the water and he will work out what the course is, and he will say the course is going to be 4, 6, 7, 8, or whatever the course is going to be. And he will make sure the rescue boat's told everyone what's going on. So you just need to go past the back of the committee boat. When you get out there, go past the committee boat, shout out to them and say, what's the course? And they will shout out to you, it's 3, 5, 6, 7, or whatever it is. Okay? So that's the first thing. So to find out the course, just get out to the committee boat and ask the question. They will tell you what's going on. There's a couple of bits of information they won't tell you. One is they won't tell you how many laps there are in particular, and we'll come on to that in a moment. So they'll go through the start sequence and you'll start racing. And for this, for argument's sake here, we'll say the course is going to be, the wind's coming, oh, sorry. We'll say that the wind's coming this way, which means the course might be 3, 5, 7, might be the course, okay? So you start here, and then you have to beat up to 3, because you can't go in a straight line. And then you don't know which way around 3 you've got to go. I know it looks obvious that you go this way round. You might say it's obvious, but it isn't always obvious. In theory, you might have to go around this way round. The race officer should tell you which way round marks you go. Like typically they will say all marks to starboard or all marks to port or something like that, because it will be a nice circle and they can say all marks to starboard, all marks to port. So in this case, mark 3 will be to starboard. And that means you'd be going around it this way with the mark on the starboard side of the boat, on the right-hand side of the boat. So you go around it the sensible way, and then you do that like that. Now, typically, it would be sensible, but very, very occasionally you have the race officer do something stupid and tell you to take that mark to port. And I have seen that happen, so don't just take it for granted that it's always the obvious way around. So yeah, you then just sail the course and you carry on around the course. You take your 5 and you go to your 7 and then go around. And then the next mark is 3, but actually it's not. In club racing, you always have to go through the start-finish line every lap. And that's just so the race officer can keep control of the race, so that he can, one, shorten the race easily, and he knows that everyone's going to go through the same point every lap, and he can also count you through as well. So it's really important you do that. You will get disqualified if you don't go through the start-finish line every time. So you've been racing around 4, 5, or maybe 2, 3 laps. You realise that it's about half an hour into the race, and you know that races are targeted to about 40 minutes or so. So it's getting to the point at which the race might stop. and you don't know what's going on. So if there's only one fleet out there, the race officer will signal at a certain point when the race is going to stop. And the point at which he signals that is when the leading boat rounds the last mark. And what he'll do is he will do 2 hoots, and he will put up the S flag. And the S flag looks very like the Blue Peter, but it's the opposite. So you've probably seen this one before. White outside, blue inside. And that is, sorry, we've only got 10 minutes to go. That is the shorten flag. So that means the race is about to finish, okay? And then the next time you go through the line after that mark, that is up, they will shorten you, they'll give you a hoot. But I should say that's once you've completed the same number of laps as the leader. So if you've been lapped, then in theory you have to go around again. But actually the race officer might just be nice and finish you early, so that we can get another race in, because we've only got so much time with the tide. They're keen to keep things going. But that's the flag that says we're about to finish. Now, it might be that there's actually 2 fleets out, or 3 fleets out, or the regatta we had 4 fleets out on the go at the same time. And they all had staggered starts. So we didn't want to finish them all at the same time. We wanted to finish some people, but let others carry on through the finish line and do another lap. So the way that's done is you look for your class flag again. So again, you need to know what your class flag is. And in our case, it's the D flag, usually the D flag. So if there's lots of fleets out, you'll be looking for the D flag and the S flag being up at the same time. If it's a different class flag, like the H flag or something like that, you carry on racing, it's not your finish. And you shouldn't get a finish hoot as you go through. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? I think that's everything I wanted to cover off on the course. Oh, I haven't done fleet racing courses, but that's club racing courses. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so fleet racing courses, these are actually easier. They do actually differ, so I would just say always read the sailing instructions properly. But I'll just give you a typical course, what happens, just very quickly. So typically you'll have the start line, and you will have a windward mark here. So you go around that, and you'll have a spacer mark, which might be slightly smaller than the windward mark, but you'll always have a second windward mark. And then you'll typically have a gate here, okay? So what happens is you'll go up to the top, you'll beat up to the top, you'll go around the spacer, and then you'll run down to the gate mark, okay? And going around the gate mark is 1 lap. And when you get to the gate here, you can choose to go around either mark. It doesn't matter which one you go around, you can go around either of them. So you can choose to go around this one, or you can choose to go around this one, which means you can do this. And there's always a classic picture here that I won't complete. But yeah, you can go around either of the 2 marks. So it's absolutely your choice. It might be that one's further up than the other, but you can choose whichever you want to go with. And then typically you go around all your laps. The race officer in a fleet race has normally told you how many laps you're going to do. They're normally very, very good at specifying it's going to be a 2-lap race or a 3-lap race. So the shorten flag doesn't come up as often in a fleet race as it does in a club race. But it can do, and they can still finish it. But the finish line will be here. It'll be this between the committee boat and a separate mark here. So you normally have to hook to there to the finish. Okay. So yeah, as I say, it does differ depending on the fleet. Sorry, depending on the racing. So you just always have to read your sailing instructions on a big fleet race. But that's typically what happens. Okay. Right, so last, basic rules. We'll see if we can get this done in 6 minutes, but if not, apparently there's a trick. If we let this meeting die and then all join the meeting again, it works. with the same number and everything, so we can just carry on. So I'm not too worried about time. So if it does cut out, then I'll start the meeting again, and we can just carry on and finish this off. All right, so basic rules. We got 3 basic rules. One is boats on opposite tack. Opposite tack. 2 is boats on same tack. And 3 is at a mark. Because those are the main 3 areas where boats come together. They're either on opposite tacks, looking at each other. So when I say attack, that means one's on port and one's on starboard. Boats are on the same tack, so that means they're both on port, they're both on starboard, or you're near a mark and something else could be going on. Okay, so we'll take boats on opposite tack first. Now this is, the rule is starboard has right of way. Oh. That's the rule. It's as simple as that. So if you've got the wind's going that way and you've got a boat coming that way and a boat coming that way, so he's going that way and he's going that way. So his sails are out on this side like that, and his sails are out on this side like that. This guy here is sitting on the starboard side, sails are on the port side, so this boat is on starboard because the wind is coming onto the starboard side of the boat. And this boat here is on port because the wind is coming onto the port side of the boat. So starboard, this boat, I haven't got a green, I can make a green note. This guy here has got right of way. It's as simple as that. And so the port boat has 2 choices. He can either duck, change his course and duck, so go behind the starboard boat, or he can put a tack in to stay away from the starboard boat. That's it. Those are his 2 choices, but he has to keep clear. If he hits him, he's in the wrong. He has to do a 360 penalty. So that's that. Port and starboard comes in all angles of the course. So you could have, before the start, for example, you could just have 2 boats pointing at each other before the start. One going that way and one going that way. And then again, it's the starboard boat that has right of way, and the port one has to keep clear. And then you might have it going downwind, because you know darts don't go dead downwind, so they go downwind like this. And so again, this boat, things right. This boat, the wind is coming in on the starboard side. Sorry. This boat here is coming in on the starboard side, so he's on starboard. And on this one, the wind's coming in on the port side of the boat, so he's on port. So again, the starboard boat is right of way, and the port one has to give way. It's a simple rule. So that's rule number 1. That's the most important rule to know. All right, so rule number 2 is boats on the same tack. And we'll go with the normal circumstance first. So you've got a boat who's on starboard, here, going upwind. And you've got a boat here who's on starboard, coming downwind. So both of these boats are on starboard. So the rules, starboard has right of way, doesn't matter at all. It's completely, although we've got less than 1 minute, so I'll let this recording die out, and then I'll start it again straight away, so we can all dial back in again. But yeah, so you've got the starboard, doesn't matter. So we have to rely on the next one, which is, next rule is windward boat keeps clear. Oh, sorry, I keep on pressing a button on my pen. Windward boat keeps clear. So which is the windward boat? The wind's coming from this direction. So windward means closest to the wind. So that means that this boat here is windward. So he has to avoid this boat coming upwind. So he has to either go down to avoid him or jibe out the way. And that's what the rule is. So generally, boats coming downwind have to give way to boats going upwind if they're on the same tack. Port and starboard still applies. So if this boat was on port, then the boat coming downwind was still a right of way. But in this case, it's the windward boat has to keep clear. Okay. Now, windward boats sometimes happens in other circumstances as well. So you take that photo, Nick. Sometimes happens in other. All right. So sorry about that, that interruption. But that's how Zoom is, unfortunately. So if I share my screen again, we can finish off this chat. So yeah, so people have to mute again, by the way. If you were on mute before, then it would have cancelled it. So if you can mute, that'll be wonderful. So other times that the windward boat keeps clear matters is when you're going potentially going the same direction. So boats going upwind like this. Now these rules, this is where the rules get a little bit finicky, and I really don't want to go into the detail of this. But generally speaking, this boat here, I'll do them in red, this boat here has to give way of this boat here if they're both going upwind like this. Now that isn't normally an issue because you're both going the same direction, you're 2 meters apart, it really isn't a problem. But if the green boat is climbing very, very slightly higher than the red boat, is pinching more than the red boat, then the red boat has to keep clear. It's just how it is, unfortunately. And then the other thing is this circumstance sometimes happens on the start line as well. Like if you're the red boat and you're quite happily sitting on the start line, a green boat appears out of nowhere and is going at a different angle to you and it's insisting that you move. He's saying up, up, up because you're windward boat and you have to keep clear. He cannot just force you to move. He has to give you time and opportunity to keep clear. So if people start doing that, just shout, give me time and opportunity, and then they'll get bored and they'll go somewhere else. But yeah, you generally do have to keep clear, but they have to give you time and opportunity before the start. So yeah, that's boats on the same tack. And then the last rule I wanted to go through is at a mark.
I just ask about boats on the same tack downwind. So when reaching.
Yeah, boats on the same tack down, it's the same principle. So if you've got reaching, for example, you've got 2 boats like this. You've got, yeah, the windward boat. So the windward boat is the one nearest the wind again, is that one. And the leeward boat is the one furthest from the wind. So if the leeward boat chooses to go this way and essentially cuts up the red boat, fine. The rules allow him to do that. And then the red boat has to follow. He's got no choice. The red boat cannot force the green one to carry on sailing its course. Even if the mark is over here somewhere, the mark might be over here, the green boat can still force the red boat up because the red boat has to keep clear.
So you don't have to sail a proper course?
No, if you're outside of 3 boat lengths, which is where the at a mark rule comes in, if you're outside of those 3 boat lengths, no, you do not have to sail a proper course.
Okay.
You can actually take them all the way up to close hauled, so all the way up to close hauled. You don't think you can go past close hauled at the moment in the rules, but you can go all the way up that way, all the way up to there. So the green boat, it's actually a tactic the green boat might be doing. If he knows that this boat, the red one's faster, but if he lets the red one come through and the red one's gonna take all his wind, then he might want to protect his space by, what he's trying to do is he's trying to force the red one underneath him instead of going over him to try and protect his wind. So it's a perfectly valid tactic. Okay, so the last one I wanted to go through is at a mark. So what I'm going to say now is valid for every mark of the course except for 2. or really one, it's not valid at the finish, and it's not valid at the windward mark, or a windward mark. So you've got the windward mark is the top mark of the course, a mark that you're beating to where you're having to zigzag up to. That's the windward mark. So this rule is not valid there in the same way. Well, it is sort of. We'll come on to the windward mark in a minute, and it's not valid at the finish. I think the finish is a bit of a grey area, but yeah, it shouldn't be an issue. So the 3 boat lengths mark, 3 boat lengths rule. So you got your mark, and we're going to go around it this way. And you've got 2 boats. You got your boats. So you've got a boat length is like that. So that's 3 boat lengths there. So we've got what you might call an imaginary 3 boat length circle. Okay. Now that's important, because if you've got 2 boats outside of this circle, then it doesn't matter. That circle is not valid at all. It nothing means anything at all. But then what matters is the second any boat breaks this 3 boat length barrier like that. Okay, so the second this boat hits that 3 boat length barrier, there's a test that is done. And that test is that there is a line drawn 90 degrees to his transom. And any boat that has an inside overlap of his transom has the right to go inside him at the mark. And that's called water at the mark. So that means I'll draw him in green rather than black. That means the green boat here, oh, my screen share's just stopped. Where is it? Have my screen shares? No, it was just my computer that changed. So the green boat here has got right of way to go inside the mark. So this is where the black one has now got a proper course rule to sail. He has to now round in a way that he gives room for the green one, and the green one has to round in a gentlemanly-like manner. So the green one cannot say, "Oh, I can force you out over here." He cannot do that. He has to round that mark in a gentlemanly-like manner. So the black one only has to give a reasonable amount of space. Okay. Now you might have lots of boats. You might even have a chain of boats here. Guess what? This boat here has to give way of all of them. He has to go all the way around and has to give this whole raft of boats space to go through. And it can be horrible if you're on the outside. It's just unfortunately how it is. Okay. So that's typically at club racing, though. This rule will only be 2 boats next to each other, and that's how you decide who has the rights to go inside. Is who's got the inside line at 3 boat lengths to go.
John, if you're going downwind and so coming into that mark as such, if that furthest away boat that's still got water rights, if they're that far away that the tide was against them and they never make that mark anyway, how does that impact that rule?
Coming on to that right now, Mel.
Okay.
Well, the answer is if you don't have to physically give them water because they can't get there, you can do what you want, because you have still given them room. You have given them room to, by sailing your proper course and going as tight as you can, you've still let them sail their proper course, so you've not infringed at all.
All right, cool.
So you don't have to give space in that circumstance because it's just not needed. So a special circumstance to this rule is where the mark is there, and I'll move that down a bit. The mark's here, and the wind's coming this way, and people are coming from this direction. So people are zigzagging down the course, downwind. Okay. So if you've got 2 boats over here, oh, and we're going to go around the mark this way, by the way, for this discussion. People coming down this way. So you might have 1 boat here and 1 boat here. at the 3 boat length circle. And as we've already agreed, the green boat has right of way because he's just got that overlap. Hopefully I've given an overlap, but he's just got the overlap. So he will have right of way to go around the inside of that mark. However, that's not the circumstance we're going to look at today, or now. We're going to look at the circumstance that there's 2 boats here like this. In fact, I'm going to draw this one a little bit further out deliberately. So we've got this boat here like this, okay? So he's not actually reached the 3 boat lengths, doesn't matter, he's 3.5 boat lengths off or whatever. And so we got to do the test again. So they're coming in completely different directions. This guy here is on starboard, and this guy here is on port. So we've got port and starboard to worry about as well. Now, around a mark, within that 3 boat length circle, port and starboard does not matter at all. It is completely gone. So you do not need to worry about port and starboard in this circumstance. It doesn't matter. All we care about is who's got inside overlap. So we do the test like we did before, and we do the 90-degree test, which is like that. And this boat here, the starboard boat, is clearly inside that 90-degree test, because that 90-degree test includes this boat here, and includes this boat here, and includes this boat that hasn't even jibed yet. They all have water at this mark technically. Now, Mal's point earlier is you don't care about these guys. They're 20 boat lengths away. It doesn't matter. You can give them water, but you've already rounded the leeward marks. They're irrelevant. It's only the people that will actually come and interact with you are the ones that you actually need to worry about. But it means that if you're coming in on this direction here with people rounding that way, boats on port, every single boat coming in on starboard will have right of way to cut in on that mark and get an inside overlap. Every single one of them. Okay, happy with that? The inverse is true.
John, is there a shout on that one as well? Because I remember this happening at the 2017 Nationals, coming in on this angle. You know, being novice at the time, not knowing whether I had rights or not, thinking that I did, but wasn't sure. What would be the shout in that instance?
Water.
Yeah.
One word, water. So the green boat there should be shouting water at the top of his voice, and the red boat will give him space. And the green boat will just be able to, they'll come down here, and they'll come down like this, and the green boat will just be able to tuck inside.
Is this bringing back some bad memories, Mal?
Absolutely. Well, let me put it this way: that black flag that got shown earlier, that happened as well.
Yeah, if you don't know to be careful with that, you can get hit with it quite hard. So that's the rule going downwind. I will switch it about here just to prove that it's not always the starboard boat that has right of way. But if we change it around so we're actually going this way around the mark, then here, the port hand boat, this boat here, the boat on port now has right of way. So this boat has right of way around the mark instead of the starboard boat. Because that's no longer there, and the test now goes that way. Okay, so again, in this case, the port hand boat has right of way around the mark. So for once, the port guy has right of way. Okay, everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
So that's water at the mark, and I said that there were 2 exceptions. The finish line I don't really want to go into because, to be honest, I don't know the rules that much, so I don't want to seem like a silly person. But I will talk about the windward mark, because the windward mark is a special mark of the course in terms of water at the mark. Because the way to think about it is, you know, I told you that port and starboard does not exist inside the 3 boat length circle. That is not true at the windward mark. Port and starboard does exist at the windward mark. So you'll have a windward mark there, and we'll pretend we're going around to port, so we're going around that way. I'll give you a wind angle as well. So we're going around that way there. And that means in this circumstance here, where we've got a boat on starboard coming in here, and a boat on port coming in here. And you might say, but they're within the 3 boat lengths. The boat on port must have right of way because he's got the inside track. No, it's port and starboard. The green one has right of way, full stop. So that means that the port boat either has 2 choices. You can either duck the green one, or if he's a jammy bugger, he can hope that the green one has left enough room without realizing it and try and squeeze in. But if the green boat has to alter course at all, then the red boat's infringed and has to do a penalty. So yeah, just be careful at the top mark. It's still port and starboard still applies. If you've got 2 green boats here, and they're like this, and they're coming in, then yes, of course, water at the mark still applies in this case, because yeah, this boat has right of way because he's got the inside overlap. So water still applies if they're on the same tack, but if you're on different tacks, then port and starboard applies. Okay. Now this rule does have one very, very, very weird circumstance that I just want to go over quickly, and this is why most races, in fact all regatta races, and most race officers will always set your windward mark going to port. So you will normally, in 99% of circumstances, club races, this isn't always the case, which is why I want to let you know about this rule. But normally, you'll sail, can't draw today, you will normally sail around this to port, so you'll leave the mark on the port side. And that's because the rules are quite sensible on that side, as we've just been through them. However, if this mark is to starboard, so we're going that way around it, the rules get really, really weird. Because if you are here, there, red boat here, and you've got a green boat coming in here, okay? Might have to actually zoom in. You've got the red boat doing that, and the green boat doing that. Who's got right of way here? I've already said that the green boat has right of way, port and starboard. So that means the red boat, its proper course is to carry on around here. The green boat doesn't care, quite frankly. It's not its problem. The green boat can do that and tack here and actually force the red boat to tack, even though the red boat was clear to go around the mark. The green boat has all the rights in the world here, and the red boat has no rights at all. And especially with a lot of boats on the course, this can make this direction of mark a bit of carnage, to be honest. So yeah, it gets quite interesting. And one last interesting point here is this is why team racing is one of the few exceptions of the first mark's always to port. Team racing, they actually make it go to starboard deliberately just to cause chaos, because it gets more interesting that way. But yes, that's why race officers will try and avoid the first mark, the windward mark, being to starboard, because the rules just go crazy. The rules are clear, but they just have unintended circumstances where you have funny stuff going at the top mark. Can you imagine this circumstance if you have 100 boats coming in? So I think that's everything I wanted to cover. So we've done starts, we've done flags, we've done course, and we've done basic rules. And with those 3 basic rules, that is pretty much most of the rules you need to know. So yeah, I think has that been helpful to people? I don't want to waffle on for the sake of it. So has that been helpful to people?
It has, John.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, so any questions before we close off?
No, that was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, really good. Thanks.
Yep, thank you, John.
No problem. Well, just before we do finish off, I'm happy to do chats. If anyone has any desires, they can think of any circumstances or anything that they want to have a chat about, especially if we're going to be on sailing lockdown now for a few weeks. Do just let me know on the chat, and I will. I'm more than happy to put another session in.
Cool.
So just ask, really.
That would be great. Yeah.
And
Okay.
Can you send a link to this recording through?
Yes, I will do. Yeah, once I've worked out how to do that. But yeah, I will do.
Thanks, Jonathan. That was brilliant.
All right. Thanks all. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Saw a bit too much of Mal's abdomen, but apart from that, it's great.
Well, I didn't realise that where to put it, that the camera was still showing, because I was busy looking at the whiteboard, so I didn't see that. If I'd have realised that, I'd have sucked in.
Point shot at one point, which anyway.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.